Your dog hasn't seen you in 6 months. You walk through the door. What happens in its brain in that moment, the science behind it, is one of the most unsettling things researchers have discovered about animal memory, because it's not what you think. It's something much more personal than that. Chester Zoo, December 2020. Lindsay Murray hadn't been inside the primate enclosure in 7 months. COVID had shut everything down. She was wearing a mask, nose, cheeks, mouth, everything covered. Boris, a western lowland gorilla she'd known for nearly 30 years, was resting on a platform on the other side of the glass. He looked up, and within 10 seconds, without hesitation, without confusion, he crossed the enclosure, sat directly in front of her, and made the exact same expression he'd made for her hundreds of times before. Not a new reaction, not a cautious one, the same one. 7 months, half her face hidden, glass between them. 10 seconds. Now here's what the science says happened in those 10 seconds and why it changes everything you think you know about what you mean to the animals in your life. To understand Boris, you have to start with a crow. In 2006, wildlife biologist John Marsloff ran one of the strangest experiments in the history of behavioral science. He and his students trapped wild crows on the University of Washington campus while wearing a rubber caveman mask. Same people, same clothes, same routes, only the face changed. 7 crows were caught, briefly held, and released unharmed. Then they put the masks away. Weeks later, when researchers returned wearing the caveman mask, the crows attacked, scolded it, dive-bombed it, recruited other crows to mob it. The neutral mask? Nothing. But here's where it stops being a cool experiment and starts being something else entirely. The reaction grew over time instead of fading. Years later, more crows were responding to the dangerous mask than had ever seen the original trapping. Crows that were never caught. Crows that weren't even alive when it happened. The memory had moved between birds, and the mask still triggered the response when it was tilted, inverted, or partly covered, which means the crow wasn't storing a photograph of a face. It was storing what that face means. Threat, danger, him. And if animals store what a face means, not what it looks like, then the question isn't whether your pet remembers your face. The question is what your face means to them. Here's where it gets personal. In 2018, researchers from the universities of Sussex and Portsmouth showed domestic horses photographs of human faces, either angry or happy. Then hours passed. Later, the same person appeared in front of the horse in real life, wearing a completely neutral expression. No anger, no smile, nothing. And yet the horses behaved differently, depending on which photograph they had seen hours earlier. The face in front of them was neutral. The memory wasn't. One photograph, hours earlier, completely different context, and it was still shaping how the horse treated the actual human being standing in front of it. Now think about what that means for your dog. Not one photograph, not hours of memory. Every time you've come home, every time you've fed them, every time you've sat with them on a bad day, when you didn't feel like talking to anyone, but somehow sitting next to them was enough. Every single one of those moments isn't stored as a picture in their memory. It's stored as meaning. You mean something to that animal, and that meaning doesn't fade the way you think it does. But how far does that meaning actually reach? There's a species that answers this question more completely than any other animal on the planet. Elephants. Elephants have the largest brain of any land animal. They have a hippocampus, the region associated with memory, that is proportionally enormous even by mammalian standards. And they use it in ways that researchers are still struggling to fully document. In Kenya, scientists studying wild elephant populations discovered something that took years to fully accept. Elephants remember specific humans across decades, not categories of humans, not humans who helped us as a general group. Specific individuals. There are documented cases of elephants recognizing researchers they hadn't seen in over 10 years, responding differently to them than to strangers, approaching them with what field researchers describe as a kind of deliberate familiarity. But the more important discovery wasn't about recognition. It was about what the elephants remembered alongside the person. In communities where elephants had experienced poaching, the animals showed measurably different responses to humans carrying objects that resembled weapons, even when those humans showed no threatening behavior. The threat wasn't stored as a general fear of humans, it was stored with much more precision than that. This person, this object, this outcome. And the reverse is also true. Elephants in rescue situations, animals that had been pulled from mud pits, freed from snares, treated for injuries, were later observed behaving differently around their rescuers than around other humans they encountered. Not just calmer, different. One researcher who had treated an injured elephant returned to the same area 14 months later. The elephant approached her from across a clearing, stopped a few feet away, and extended its trunk toward her hand. 14 months. One encounter. The trunk is an elephant's primary sensory organ. It contains more than 40,000 individual muscles and carries a density of nerve endings comparable to human fingertips. When an elephant extends its trunk to touch something deliberately, it is not a casual gesture. It is an examination, an acknowledgement, a recognition. And 14 months hadn't changed what that person meant. This is the pattern that keeps appearing across species. Crows, horses, gorillas, elephants. Different brains, different evolutionary histories, different relationships with humans, and yet the same fundamental architecture underneath. Animals don't store faces. They store what faces mean. Researchers studying how animals process familiar individuals found that the moment of recognition and the emotional response aren't two separate steps that happen in sequence. They happen simultaneously. The animal doesn't see a face and then feel something. It sees a face as something, which changes the question entirely. The question isn't whether animals can remember us. Of course they can. The question is what kind of memory they're using and how much of us fits inside it. Dogs give us the clearest window into this, because dogs have spent more time living alongside humans than almost any other animal on Earth. 10,000 years at minimum. Possibly more. And in that time, something happened to the dog brain that didn't happen in wolves, their closest relatives. Dogs became specifically sensitive to human emotional signals. In experiments where dogs were shown different human facial expressions, their brains did not treat every expression as the same category of information. Fear produced one pattern of neural activity. Anger produced a different one. Happiness could engage reward-related circuitry in a way that neutral expressions simply didn't. A dog isn't looking at your face and deciding, human, safe, proceed. It's reading information within your face. The way you might read the tone of someone's voice, picking up on something real, something that tells it what kind of moment this is, what kind of person you are right now, what this interaction is likely to mean. And it's been practicing that skill with your face specifically every single day it has known you, which means the dog that greets you at the door after a long trip isn't just reacting to your presence. It's reading you, the way it has always read you, the way it has learned specifically to read you. Back to Boris. After a 3-year gap, longer than the 7 months Boris had waited, another gorilla named Asante saw Lindsay return, also wearing a mask. Asante approached and focused intensely on one specific part of Lindsay's face, her eyes. Not the mouth, not the nose, the eyes. Because when most of the face disappears, the eyes carry everything else. They move, they direct attention, they carry expression. And for an animal that has spent years reading you, your eyes might be the most familiar thing about you. The particular way they look when you're happy, the particular way they focus when you're paying attention, the way they look at them specifically, different from the way they look at anyone else. Asante wasn't guessing. She was reading the one part of Lindsay that no mask could hide. So what actually happened when Boris saw Lindsay through that glass? He didn't need to see all of her. He only needed enough of her to retrieve everything else. Her eyes triggered the identity. The identity retrieved the history. The history told him what this person means. 30 years of meaning doesn't disappear. When part of a face disappears, it becomes the pattern. The eyes are enough to unlock it. And this is the part that's hard to sit with. We spend a lot of time wondering if our pets love us back, if the reunion is as real for them as it is for us, if they actually miss us when we're gone, or if the excitement when we return is just relief that the food source is back. The research doesn't give us certainty about what animals feel. It can't reach inside another mind and translate the experience. But it gives us something. It tells us that the animals who know us aren't storing a simple record of our appearance. They're storing something that includes the emotional weight of every encounter, the meaning of our presence, the particular way we make them feel, and that storage is robust enough to survive months of absence, changes in our appearance, glass and masks and time and distance. The crow remembered the dangerous face for years. The horse carried one photograph across hours and contexts. The elephant held 14 months of meaning in a single trunk extension. And Boris held 30 years in 10 seconds. So the next time you walk through that door and your dog loses its mind, or your cat slowly blinks at you, or the animal you've cared for looks up like no time has passed at all, that's not just habit. That's not just hunger. That's not just an animal doing what animals do. That is 30,000 years of a different kind of memory, telling them exactly who you are and exactly what you mean. built from every morning you fed them, every evening you sat with them, every time you came back when they didn't know if you would. You are not a face to them. You are what that face means, and apparently, that doesn't go away. If this made you think about an animal in your life, share it with someone who needs to see it. And if you want to understand just how deep animal memory actually goes, what elephants remember about the humans who hurt them and the humans who helped them, across distances and decades, that video is next.